So I just found out that a buddy of mine from high school died a couple of months ago. His name was Jon Norsworthy. I hadn't seen him in like 30-something years, but I was reading his obituary online, and the list of accomplishments and things that he'd done and people he'd helped and jobs he'd held and places he'd been. He was 10 times the man I am. I met him when his family moved into the neighborhood where I lived in Largo, Florida, when I was in high school. And one of my earliest memories of Jon Norsworthy was he called me one night at my house and he said, "Hey, can you meet me out in front of your house? I'm going to walk down. I need to talk to you." And I'm like, all right. So I go outside and he's there and he just starts to tell me about how he used to run with a pretty dangerous crowd. He was into some bad stuff, and but then he turned his life around because of Jesus. Essentially, he was witnessing to me. I didn't know what witnessing was back then. I've been witnessed to a couple of times since then. There's usually a sales pitch at the end of the story. It's usually like, "So what do you think? How about you give Jesus a look? Or maybe you give Jesus a try, huh? But there was none of that. It was just he wanted to tell his story, and he wanted me to know that was kind of what made him him. And I remember thinking that was cool, and that he got his strength from that. One day at lunch in the cafeteria, John and I were sitting on the same side of the booth in the lunchroom, and a guy came in and he wanted to beat me up. He was screaming and he was yelling, he was pointing at me, "I'm going to kick your ass," blah, blah, blah. And I was a little scared, I'm not going to lie. And John just looked at the guy and sneered, and he said, "Hey, watch your mouth." And the guy turned his attention to John, and he said, "Yeah, you're next. I'm going to beat your ass too." And John just stared him down with a grin on his face. And I remember, oh my God, that was cool. Oh my God, that was cool. John wasn't a big guy, but he was strong and he was tough. He was a wrestler. I used to give him a ride to school in the morning, and he used to get into the car dressed in a trash bag. He was wearing a trash bag underneath his clothes because he was trying to cut weight. We both went to Largo High. He invited me to his youth group. It was in this building on Mellenbacher. And it was basically just an excuse for a bunch of teenagers to get together on a Thursday evening. But we sang songs, and it was cool. Jon Norsworthy and I got kicked out of this grocery store when we were in high school. It was an Albertsons then, and we went in and we were just being idiots, teenagers. He crawled in one of the baskets and I was pushing him around and he was making noises like a robot. Certainly benign stuff by today's standards, especially. We weren't like yelling at people. We weren't screaming bad words. We weren't knocking stuff off the shelves. We weren't stealing anything. But the manager came over and said, "Get him out of there. You guys are banned for life." And for the record, it was no worse than anything teenagers do now. Now teenagers come in to get in these things and zip around until the manager comes over and tells them to get lost. Banned for life from this grocery store, Jon Norsworthy and I. Seems like a lot of people wanted to beat me up in high school.